Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit that subscribe button if you're new so you don't miss any of our great football content this season. Well, listen, some of the night was good. As a longtime Mariner fan, we had our opportunities. Julio Rodriguez came up for the final at bat of the season. He and Cal Raleigh, that's who you would have chosen. They got a homer from Julio Rodriguez. They got a homer from Cal Raleigh. The Mariners led late innings on the road, where road teams, strangely, have done very well in game sevens. Before tonight, they'd won 7 of the last 8. George Kirby on the mound, but Dan Wilson, the very popular manager, who was a great defensive catcher in all of baseball, played for the Mariners, was an all-star, I think, one year. Beloved manager. He elected to throw to George Springer. I would not have. There was a base open. You could argue they should have gone to Munoz, their top closer. But Seattle is a really good team. They have, Luis Castillo and George Kirby and Brian Wu. Excellent bullpen. Very flexible. They can do a lot of things. Munoz is a great closer. You got 2 big sticks and Julio Rodriguez and Cal Raleigh. You run the bases. You can grind out runs, hit for power. The Mariners earned a Game 7 in the American League Championship Series. But Dan Wilson probably considered, walking George Springer, who's the former Astro, who was known as a great clutch hitter for the Astros and has been a great clutch hitter for the Blue Jays. I would not have pitched to George Springer. I don't know if I would have brought in Munoz or not. Probably it was the biggest at bat the Mariners were facing, arguably in their existence. But that's not kind of the rotation how the Mariners had worked throughout the season. So, Toronto's a really good team. And they thoroughly dominated the Yankees. Remember, they crushed the Yankees in those first 2 games in Toronto. So the Mariners had a lead. They had George Kirby. You know what? They got beat by a better team. So I thought the Mariners-Dodgers was going to be a really interesting series. A lot of great starting pitching. I thought it was going to be a real situational World Series with, some long balls. The Mariners' best 2 hitters are power hitters, and everybody in the Dodgers seemingly hits for power. Dodgers will be a huge favorite over the Toronto Blue Jays and should be. Listen, if you're a network, you're never rooting for Canadian teams. Canadian teams don't count. They use a different system for ratings. Their consumers don't count for our American TV ratings. So, you're rooting if you're any network in this country. Our American networks want American teams. It's better for business. But Toronto was a great team all year, and they deserved it. The Dodgers have overwhelmed Cincinnati, Philadelphia, completely overwhelmed Milwaukee. They're an all-star lineup with sensational pitching. They've apparently solved their bullpen woes all season, so they'll go in. Friday in Toronto is Game 1. Dodgers will be a prohibitive favorite and should be. Listen, when you're a Mariner fan, when you grew up a Mariners fan, it was a magical season, and they're well run. Middle of the road payroll, never been a big free agent hub. They have to draft and develop, but they've got the right manager, a lot of good young arms, and it's all she wrote. 4-3, Blue Jays headed to the World Series. All right, let's talk the Detroit Lions beating Baker Mayfield and the Bucs 24-9. Dan Campbell, the coach of the Lions, is like a ripped version of Ted Lasso. I don't know if he's adding a ton schematically, but there's that belief thing. And, they're missing all sorts of it's backups in the secondary. And yet Baker Mayfield had one of his worst outings of the year, 28 for 50, touchdown a pick, 228 yards, under duress all night long. The pass rate percentage, rush percentage by Detroit, it had to be over 50%. They were winning their matchups all night long. So it's just one of those nights where, and you could tell early on in this game, it should have been 24-0. And Detroit Goff had a terrible pick and they made mistakes. But you could just tell the juice in the building for the Lions was incredible. I was doing my herd hierarchy for tomorrow, and Kansas City's the best team in the league. I'm not sure who the second best team is. The best roster in the NFL, I think, is Philadelphia. So they're probably the second best team in the league. I mean, they just figure out ways to win. They can no longer run the ball, which is bizarre, but they're the best roster along with Kansas City in the NFL. But man, there's a lot of, Detroit and Tampa. If that game's in Tampa, it felt like Detroit got a lot of the calls tonight. I mean, like, go either way stuff. I don't think the officials or the reviews were wrong. It's just one of those things. At home, you tend to get a break. On the road, you don't. It's always felt like that since I've been watching football since I was 8. I just feel like if Detroit and Tampa played again and it was in Tampa, Tampa could win. I think Denver's stacked, but they should have been beaten by the New York Giants. There's an argument. I mean, the Rams defense the last 3 or 4 weeks has been insane. There's an argument the Rams, McVay, Stafford, and that defense, are they the third best team in the league? Is it the Colts who had the Rams beaten in SoFi? I don't know. I mean, I just know when I watch Detroit play, especially at home, that's a really good football team. But you don't get to play Super Bowls at home. You generally don't get your conference championship at home. But I felt like it was just a buzzsaw tonight, and Tampa wasn't up for it. And I mean, they had Mike Evans, but he got hurt. Igbuka is remarkable, but it was Detroit's night. They were getting big chunk plays. Jahmyr Gibbs, Brad Holmes, the executive, the GM upstairs for the Lions, who has rebuilt this into a incredibly redeemable roster. He took Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round, and Jeremiah Love for Notre Dame is going to be a first-round pick as a running back. Like, first-round running backs have done well. I mean, Todd Gurley, Zeke, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey, Gibbs, Josh Jacobs. There were some misses. Sony Michel, New England. I mean, he was the second best running back at Georgia. Belichick can't draft offense. Sony Michel should have been drafted in the second. Nick Chubb went to Cleveland. He should have been drafted in the first. So that's just sort of a Belichick drafting error. He had many. But a lot of these first-round running backs, I think you're getting, I'll be honest with you, I think it's, to some degree, it's kind of pivoting to a running back league again because everybody's playing these shell defenses. They're not giving you anything over the top. And so it's forcing you to run more. And I think Gibbs is a sensational talent. I mean, he's just one of those guys. You don't see this very often in pro sports, but Gibbs is one of those guys, even among pro athletes, has a different gear. Like, he is just quicker and twitchier and faster than fast NFL players. And he's strong. So now it's time for this week's Redeem Team member, brought to you by Hulu's Chad Powers. This week it's Devontae Adams. 3 touchdowns in London. Rams crush the Jacksonville Jaguars. Adams became the second player to have 3 touchdowns in an international game. He and Stafford were dialed in. Chad Powers is now streaming. New episodes Tuesday on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. Terms apply. All right, today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. They're a great partner. On Hard Rock Bet, you don't have to wait for week 8 to kick off to get in on the action. There's always something to bet on. If you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet yet, there's still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets. If you win, just place a $5 bet. That's it, $5. If it hits, you not only get your winnings, but you get $150 in extra bonus bets. The NBA is back, which means it's time to shoot your shot on Hard Rock Bet. You're home for all the hoops action all season long. If you need a little help with your first bet, check out the streaks heating up inside the Hard Rock Bet Stats Hub. You can find live odds to bet on all of these streaks right in the Hard Rock Bet app. Download the Hard Rock Bet app today and make your first deposit. Detroit, when you play at home, I went 4-1 on Blazing 5, and this was my second favorite bet after Cleveland over Miami in harsh weather. So my favorite 2 bets this week were 4-1 back-to-back weeks. NFL is such a hard league to bet. I mean, I watched Denver win. Denver shouldn't have won. They trailed 19-0. I had Denver -7. They got their ears boxed for 2.5 hours. So, but this felt like these Monday night football games. Seattle, by the way, is beating Houston as I do this. Seattle's a great Monday night football team. Detroit's won 5 straight games on Monday night football. I think many of those have been at home. So it was just one of those things. I don't think any less of Baker and the Bucs. There are games we all watch them, and you feel like after like 2 series, you just kind of feel like all the energy is on one side, and it felt like it was in Detroit's corner tonight. And again, Dan Campbell with a patchwork defense. It's so obvious what is happening in New England and Detroit. If you look at the really good teams in this league, Nick Sirianni is not a schematic whiz. He's a CEO type. He's an alpha. Is that what happens in Miami? Is there's no leadership. Tua's not a strong voice. Mike McDaniel's more of a coordinator than he is a stand in front of the room and galvanize a bunch of alpha males. You just watch Detroit and Dan Campbell. It works. He has this team absolutely believing in themselves. And it feels like that secondary for Detroit has been injury plagued or bad forever. So much of Detroit I like. It's just, I feel like they can't get the secondary solved. The minute it's solved, it gets banged up. But they win tonight, and I know they lost soundly to Kansas City. They're one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the league to me. When you can run the football like that, when you have that offensive line, when they had that play with Penei Sewell, when Penei Sewell moves outside like on a sweep and he's coming down the pipe and you're a corner or a safety, good hell. That's the stuff defensive backs have nightmares over. So listen, congrats to Dan Campbell. Ted Lasso with a bench press. So much of what you do as a coach is getting these guys to believe. It's what Vrabel's done in New England. New England's got some good players. I mean, they spent some money, but they on the perimeter, they're not wildly explosive, but belief, quarterback, they run the ball pretty effectively. Is New England going to make the herd hierarchy? Probably got to find a spot for them. We'll see you tomorrow on FS1.